Welcome to the Life and Recovery Podcast. My name is Mark. This is Elise. Say hi, Elise.
I'm Elise. Hi.
Wow, that's squeaky.
I
Anyway,
do it to annoy you.
that's
mostly.
great. That's mission accomplished. So, conversations about life and recovery. How do you do things differently? If anybody finds this useful, please share it with anybody. Goal is to just talk about how to live life differently, and different topics come up, and anybody, usually we sometimes have a guest, sometimes we don't. Today we don't. So we have some ideas internally that we were going to talk about and see how they go. So,
Nobody likes us anymore.
yeah, clearly. That's all right. You know, there was a lot that we were doing when we were making the books that actually just were pretty good conversations amongst ourselves, so we're going to do that today. So, what we were going to or the thought you had earlier was, please elaborate a little bit.
So, as always, we talk about, like, what is going on, what's relevant, what we're learning or experiencing in life currently. So, for me, I've been practicing a lot of faith, and even though I've been in recovery for 7 years, things that I've heard and that I've learned, they take on like deeper meanings, or I learn another layer to the things. So recently, I'm on another round of steps, and I'm on my second step, so it's a lot of higher power stuff. And I've been learning yet more ways to connect with, to connect spiritually, to like seek out guidance and stuff. But I always feel like whatever step I'm on has a lot to do with where I'm at. And I feel like I'm learning how to have faith in whatever is outside of me in another layer, another level. And I'm realizing that I haven't really been practicing faith that much. And that's mostly because, you know, if I can see that something is going to work out, basically, like logically, it'll probably work out. I have hope, but that's like normal. You know, when I'm in situations where I cannot see any direction, any clear direction to where I'm going, and I'm in a place where there are variables that really matter, like paying rent, I realized that having faith and not knowing at all suddenly where my life is really going in the next chapter is really hard for me.
So, seeing the difference, I mean, essentially, you brought up two things. What's the difference between faith and hope? You know, hope is easy when also what you said is hope is easy when you kind of know what's going to happen. Or you can hypothesize what's going to come next, or there's a chance that things are going to work out the way that you want. Where faith is blind belief that this is the way it is. That is, I have no proof, I have nothing tangible, I have no evidence, but it's just this is the way it is. You know?
Yeah.
And so, how do you reconcile these ideas of faith? How do you believe when you don't know? How do you find, everybody comes in the rooms and you talk about, oh, you need to get a higher power, you need to have a connection to God, you need to get all this. And
right.
I don't know about anybody else, but I had no clue how all that worked.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about it, but I did notice over time that, how can I explain this? So I was talking with a bunch of people earlier about how do you set a trajectory when you don't necessarily know where you're going? You know? Like a lot of things in recovery is like, I don't really know where I'm going. I'm doing a lot of shit and things seem to be a little bit better and I'm going in this other direction, but I'm not sure if I'm getting anywhere, and is the place I'm getting to actually where I want to go?
Yeah.
So we started breaking this down into little pieces of like, how do you set a trajectory to an unknown place or outcome or place in your life? So I was thinking about this is how can you, essentially we're talking about a path forward. How do you create a path forward when you're not sure what's next or where you're going? Which is inherently hard for me because I'm a fucking control freak. And I want to know what the hell's going to happen. Because if I know what's going to happen, then I won't get hurt. And basically, so it comes down to a piece of fear. I'm trying to avoid things going bad.
Yeah, and like, even though we're clean, we're addicts, so our heads are still like, avoid anything negative at all costs. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a natural response to like trying to plan the shit out of life to like try and make sure that never happens.
Yeah, my whole attempt to control things has everything to it's not that I'm actually trying to control the situation. I'm trying to avoid, doom, some sort of it's fear based basically. I'm trying to avoid bad things happening. So if I control the shit out of it, then I can avoid the bad thing happening, and then everything will be good. Except that never ever ever works. Ever.
Right.
The more I try to avoid it, then doom just then happens anyway. It just comes wrapped in a package I wasn't prepared for, and things are different. So how do you make decisions that are in alignment? I'm trying to think about, like, when I was using, every decision I made in my life was in alignment with that lifestyle. Who I hung out with, what I did, where I went, the jobs I had or the ones I couldn't keep, the relationships I destroyed, everything was in service of one common goal. Getting high and staying high. That was the deal. And every decision I made was in alignment with that. So, trying to tie this idea back to what we were talking about, which is faith, it took me a long time to realize my alignment was in service of my addiction, and I did anything to overcome that, regardless if it was something I believed in or not. I served one master, and it was staying high. Be damned anything that got in the way of it. Be it truth, be it my family, be it, consequences, be it, moral or ethical beliefs, any of those things, nothing stood in my way of that outcome, ever. Okay. Like it, don't like it. The reality is I did a bunch of shady shit, or I did things that harmed others. Now, why was I not surprised when shitty things happened to me as a result of that? You know what I mean? I know when you do shitty things, that's what you get out what you put back. Now, call it karma, call it whatever you want, but I noticed that happening. So my first attempt at figuring out a higher power was that. Was like, I noticed that I would, go to a store and not scan something, I was kind of broke. And so I would justify jacking a, can of beans or a $3 bag of grapes or something like that. And then, since I was still pedaling my ass around town, I'd walk out of the store doing something shady, and I'd walk outside and, I stole a 57-cent can of beans, and I'd blow a $20 bike tire on my bike. There was always this incremental 10x version of something that would go immediately wrong as a result of that. Mm-hmm. And I would notice that shit, and I was like, I do something shady, something shitty happens to me. I wonder if I do something good, is there a reverse to this? If I do good shit, will good shit happen to me? I don't know, let's test the theory. And so I stopped doing shady shit. I stopped, professing to be clean while I was actually living fucking dirty, as they say. And it, it took a little bit, but it started to work. And the more things I did that were in alignment with the life I was living now helped. So if I was to ask you, Elise, if you were to give me your top 5 lists of 10 or however many you choose, tell me things you actually believe in now that are in alignment with the life you're trying to live.
Creativity.
Okay, so being creative, what else?
Connection.
Connection to others in a healthy way.
Peace.
Peace, what does that mean to you?
Just like calm.
Calm, solitude.
Yeah.
Okay.
Humor.
Humor. I think it should be funny.
Wisdom.
Okay. Wisdom. Gratitude.
Self-honesty.
Self-honesty. Okay. Yeah, I'll throw some in there. Things that were important to me are, honesty being huge in that. Integrity. Respect. Kindness. Giving. Service to others. Health. I don't know if I said kindness yet or not, but empathy, generosity, so a lot of those, we can keep making a list as long as you want. But recently I was talking to somebody about this, is like, back to the idea of how do you know where you're going? How do you have faith in this process if you don't know the outcome? If we start living in an alignment with those things we just listed, kindness and gratitude and honesty and self-worth and respect and loyalty and empathy and fill in the blank for yourself, what we've done is those become either guardrails or like filters to what's acceptable in my life, the things I do or do not do. So now I don't need to know where I'm going, but when I have those guardrails on my life, I can come to, yeah, that's kind of shady. I don't want to do that. That's treating somebody like shit. I don't want to do that. And it, it gives you may deviate in the lane a little bit, but the idea is now you have a direction. You have a purpose.
Might be a 6-lane on the freeway, but it's better than an open field.
Yeah. To be able to go through and look at this. So how does this correlate to faith? Does this correlate to blind belief? Because go ahead.
And we discussed this a little bit earlier, but I think we're so used to being self-sufficient, even it used to be in a negative way, like we're so self-sufficient in recovery, it's just like I'm gonna run on my own thoughts and ideas. I'm gonna run that shit to the ground to get what I want. And we know that doesn't work for using. We did run it to the ground. But then in recovery, definitely for me, I can still do that. Where, and it's not, I'm not doing shady shit like you were saying, things like not doing shady shit in early recovery were extremely important. and maybe this is the next layer of it, where there's also a difference between doing what is good and doing what is better, which actually we touched on a little bit in the other podcast of like raising the bar in healthy ways, but it is like still following the same principles. So like, and it, I'll give an example. Like in early recovery, you know, my mind, my logic, my thinking, my self-sufficiency is like, we need to get a job, we need to make money, we need to figure shit out, like I have to control this, right? And it is like from a place of fear. I mean, yeah, I do need it. I mean, everybody needs a job, whatever. And faith for me was going into meetings, and there was something there that I didn't have that felt good. And so when I was told, do really simple shit like be of service, I just did it. And the crazy part is, like, that is literally how you and I met. That is how I got a job, is because you knew who I was, because you asked other people who's the most organized person you know, and everyone said me, and everyone only knew that. Everyone only knew me because I showed up for service, and that's how people knew I was organized.
Yeah.
And so that is faith to me. Like, that was a big layer of that. But there are so many examples of that. And, like, right now I'm doing, it's the same principle, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to sit in silence and just say out loud, like, I need help, I need guidance, and let what comes to me come to me, even if it doesn't make sense. And let go a little bit of that, like, thinking brain of, I'll just do this, or and maybe I'll make this work, or and the logic, right? Because the like thinking my way through shit has never worked before. Why would it now?
Yeah. And because it's hard. I mean, you're talking about letting go of the outcome of how things come to pass.
Yeah.
You know, I spent most of my life trying to get people to see the version of me I thought they wanted to see.
Yeah.
You know, because if I show you who I think you want me to see, then you won't see into who I really feel that I am. You know, and there's a big piece of the lack of self-validation, or the lack of being able to, and I think most people struggle with this on some level. Am I enough? Am I good enough?
Oh, yeah.
Is there, I remember hearing this thing where Oprah was talking to every single person that's walked off her stage, from, Beyonce to President Obama to everybody, and the first question that everybody asks, how'd I do? Did I do good?
Yeah.
And it's such a common human trait. But to go back to the idea of, like, faith towards, like, why do we do that? Why is there this jump to insecurity constantly? Why is there this inherent, and I won't say everybody, but most people will go to, did I do good enough? And can you help me see that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, so how do you have faith that, my mom and I used to wrestle about, she was very, very solid in her belief and her faith for years. And of course, me being the obstinate, smart ass little drug addict, I had to poke that with a stick as much as I possibly could. It's not this. What about this? What about that? What about... And I'd just be in a fucking pain in the ass. And she came to me, and we were talking about, obviously hers was religion. And we were back and forth about this. And I came like, Mom, how do you know? Just how do you know that anything exists beyond here? And she sat there quietly and calmly and turned around and looked at me and put her hand on my hand. And she said, I just have faith that this is the way it is. And I never questioned her again. Because it was so embodied in the statement of how she said it. I just have faith that this is what is. Now, how do you get to that level of conviction or faith? I don't know. But how do you, I heard somebody else talking about it, like how do you know what you need to do? And I'm like, I don't think you need to know. You need to know what you want. You need to work towards whatever that is. But how things come to pass is not up to us.
Yeah.
And it part of my brain says, oh, fuck that, I want to know. But that's the same part of my brain that just wants the control to avoid pain.
Yeah. That, we were saying earlier, the fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the brain's job. The brain's job is to constantly make predictions out of observations. So it's not like it's the brain's fault, but it's like if I'm always in my brain, there's no room for my soul or my heart, which don't ever make sense. But that's okay. They're not supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and there's like the world that this body we live in was designed for is not the one we live in now. If we were here 10,000 years ago, you hear a rustle in the bushes, you need to know what the hell it is. Or you get weeded out of the gene pool real quickly. Or you get thrown out of your tribe. And if that happens, I'm here 10,000 years ago and I'm by myself, my likelihood of success is very, very, very low compared to living in community, But now the reality is we don't live in the same world that we were designed for. So how do we utilize, things? I'm not saying there's not scary shit in the world, of course, but if you think about it, one of the abundance is some of our biggest problems. Like obesity is a major national problem because we have such abundant resources to food and to safety and to, I'm not saying people don't struggle by any means, but as a species, overall, we've been inherently very successful. So all the things that we were designed to evolve to become, well, it's obviously worked because we're here and we're the most dominant species on this planet. So how can we pay attention to the reality that all of the things that kept us safe back in the day may not be as valid now as they once were?
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's especially technology and all the advancements, they are very brain-like. Mm-hmm. And we still prefer humans over robots. Why? Because of the heart and the soul, the things that can connect that technology will never have. We saw that during COVID, they called it the silent pandemic, was the opioid epidemic, how much addiction and deaths increased. Mm-hmm. And all that isolation and alienation, we had our technology, but we didn't have flesh and blood each other connection. And I think everybody felt it. Everybody went crazy once we were allowed to travel and be around people. Those are things that we may not necessarily be able to understand logically always, but we know they're there. And that's kind of how I feel with faith. I did not know that meetings were going to save my life, but it was the first place where I sat in a room and I felt okay. I knew I had faith in the feeling of okayness. And I think, like, people are always saying, like, because there's so many principles, spiritual principles or values that people talk about, and then that can get overwhelming too. Like, which one do I live by? Which one do I do today? But I love how, like, people talk about, like, honesty, open-minded, willingness. Like, that's the beginning. Like, if my mind is open toward possibilities and I'm willing to follow something, even if it doesn't, like, really make sense to me, I'm good to go. Like, that's a great start. That's a great place to come from. And I feel like that's a lot of what faith is like, let me just stay open and let me just be willing for what comes up. And, like, I don't know what that looks like, but I know it'll work out somehow,
Totally. I mean, people talk about, you brought up spiritual principles earlier, and I remember hearing that first. I'm like, what the fuck is that? And I was just like, I envisioned, there's going to come a day when the clouds will part and the beams of light will come down, and there might be like tablets, like, Moses or some shit will show up with this divine principles that I need to live my life by. And this just never happened, obviously. But, I've figured out the spiritual principles that I like that are worth living by. It's basically what I like in everybody else. It's the compassion from people. It's the respect. It's the kindness. It's the generosity. Just all of those things that I like in others are the spiritual principles you can live your life by. And if we really keep making, kind of the same idea we were talking about before, is if I keep living my life in alignment with those kind of principles, these beliefs, if you will, then it takes my life in a completely different trajectory. And I don't have to, and maybe this is my way of trying to sidestep faith, but then I don't have to know what's coming, but I know it's going to continue to be better when I'm living in alignment with that, the beliefs that I want to instill in myself. This is open for anybody's interpretation. What you're going to believe in, what I'm going to believe in, completely different.
Yeah.
But then I have those, I guess guardrails is the only thing I think. Then I have those things keeping me on track. Now, where that track goes, I have zero idea.
Yeah, and I think I don't think you're sidestepping it. I think that is faith. Like, because it's not like you're given these facts, right? Of, like, do this thing, it will take you to this square, and then do this thing, it will take you to this square. Like, there's really no definite roadmap, but it is kind of these general, like you're saying, things on the side, which is really useful. And, like, that the idea that we have in the book of the 1 degree, right? Of, like, I don't have to know how to get to Panama. I know that I don't like where I am now, and so probably, like, if I move the wheel helm of the boat just by, like, 1 notch, I know that it is at least gonna land me eventually in a much different place than where I was headed. It's anywhere. I'm literally choosing anything but what I've been choosing before, right? I'm not choosing, if I do what I've been doing, I'm going to get the same result. I'm going to stay in the same, I know where that leads. We've been down this road. If I can scoot it over, like, eventually I'm veering out in some other direction. Do I know where? Yeah, if you're like a navigator of the ship and you know how all that works, sure. But, like, in general, no, it's just going to be, it's vaguely at least not here. And that's better.
Yeah, and for anybody listening to this, to put some context on the 1 degree idea that Lisa was talking about. Imagine you're sitting at the helm of a big ocean-going ship, with a big wheel on it. And if you were to just turn that wheel 1 degree, 1 teeny little degree, what would that do? In the short term, not much. But in the long term, that would take you to a completely different trajectory than the one that you're on. And so I think people very much discount, like, how do you actually do that in life? Small, meaningful decisions that may in the moment not seem like they're very impactful can send your life in a completely different direction. Now, and the other thing is, you can take this in a negative way as well. I can make one seemingly innocent decision. Oh, fuck it, it's just my friends. I'm going to go have a beer this one weekend. That's fine, I just have one. One leads to two. Two leads to three. Three leads to the next day. Well, that wasn't so bad. And, then the next day, and then 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, you're wondering how you got back to where you started at.
Yeah, we've been here before.
Yes, clearly. So making those simple 1 degree of change that could take your life in a positive direction, and it's really starting to look for those things to know that, hey, am I making a decision that's in alignment with who I am and what's important to me? Now, I don't know where it's going. Like, I love my life now. If you would have come to me when I was brand new and told me this is where my life would be, I thought you were out of your fucking mind. And if you also asked me to script this to how we got to where we are, I'd like, there's no way, not in 1,000 years. I couldn't have seen the way that the dots connected to get to where my life is today. And the great thing is, I love that if I just keep doing what I'm doing, it's going to continue in that direction. Now, I don't know what's next, but I mean, if you were to think about it for anybody who's used, think about your last day using and compare that to today. I'll bet money that your life has gone in one direction, and it's better and better and better and better. Now, how can you use that as a crystal ball into your future? Well, it makes sense. If you keep doing the things you've been doing that made your life better and better and better, you're going to keep getting the things that you've been getting.
Yeah. And sometimes it is like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I think the same thing can be applied even in recovery. Like when it's like this, then can I go, okay, I probably need to do something different again to keep to redirect, because there are plenty of times in recovery where I still get stuck. And somebody at this meeting, actually last night that I was at, that there's always like 1,000 acronyms for God that help people make it make sense to them and whatever it means to them. But I think this was probably my favorite one, and I actually never heard before. But she said basically GOD is for grow or die, and I love that because that I can wrap my head around. Of like, as long as I'm growing, I'm not dying. Like, as long as I'm growing, as long as I'm headed in a positive direction, I have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no perfection. There's no perfect recovery for anybody. That I'm sure of. But there's these kind of tweaks. It's weird. I was watching this video a while ago. They were watching planes come in to land. And I think like it's just a straight, smooth path. But you really watch a plane come in and land, it's constantly just like, doop, 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 constantly tweaking and adjusting. It's this back and forth and back and forth and back and forth till you land. And then all the wheels hit and it's stable. But all of them do that. It's this constant reevaluation and adjustment. Constant reevaluation and adjustment till you hit, as you're moving along. And keeping this target. And it was really interesting to watch him, like, because you think you're just coming and, it's smooth sailing. But it's this constant, reevaluation and adjustment and coming through and looking at how we do this. So.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know everybody gets, like, complacent at some point in recovery. I think it's normal to, like, okay, you do some work on yourself, which is uncomfortable, and then things get comfortable, and then you like being comfortable, until you're bored,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's time to grow again. And so it's wild to me how, like, it can be the same principles like faith, but I understand it in a completely different way. Um, the more that I do it, like and I think when I came in, I probably hated the word faith because it reminded me of religion. Um, re- Specific religions definitely work for a lot of people, but for me, it actually reminded me of, I mean, like, some traumatic things in my life have happened due to religion, and so anything that sounded like that was like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, the word prayer. Like, I have only really in recent times been able to figure out what that means to me, and I can, like today, now I can say out loud to nothing and no one in particular, I need help, I need guidance, and sit in silence and feel new ideas come up within me. And that's good enough for me,
Yeah.
and if there's not an idea, it doesn't mean I don't stop asking. Um, and I don't know what or who I'm asking. I'm a pretty scientific person. It actually still feels really weird for me to do that, but I do it anyways
Mm-hmm.
because I do receive guidance.
Yeah.
And that's good enough for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's faith. I don't know where it's coming from, but it works.
Yeah.
So well, cool. This is really interesting. I didn't think we'd get this deep into a topic like this, but so what were some of the main things you took away from today? If you had to pick something that stood out to you, what was it?
Um, like, doing something is better than doing nothing. Something healthy, obviously, but like taking a step um, in a direction that is at least good, even if you don't know where it's going, and like having faith that even if you can't see anything changing because of that in the moment, doesn't mean things aren't happening and getting you there, or that the door's not just open right around the corner if you just keep going.
Okay,
You
I like
know?
that. Yeah. I mean, something that just stood out to me is just I like that idea. Don't stop, the gold miner who stopped digging 1 foot before he actually hit the big vein of gold. Don't stop digging. Um, Keeping moving. I mean, making decisions in alignment with who I want to be is the biggest thing that stood out to me today. Picking what I like, knowing that if I make decisions in line with that, it's going to help me get to where I want to go. So
Yep.
really valuable. Well, thank you, Elise. And anybody else this is valuable to, you can find this podcast at Choice Recovery Path on YouTube or soon to be your local podcast stations. So thank you guys very much. Appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Bye.
All information and other content supplied or communicated in or through this video is for general informational purposes only and does not or nor is intended to constitute legal or medical advice. Any viewer of this video should contact his or her own attorney, doctor, or other applicable advisor or practitioner to obtain legal, medical, or other applicable advice with respect to the accuracy, reliability, or potential application to such viewer of any matter discussed or portrayed in this video. Please do not act or refrain from acting acting in any way based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through this video. The views expressed during this video are those of the individual presenters only and not those of Choice Recovery Path LLC or any of its customers, suppliers, or affiliates. Any liability with respect to actions taken or not taken by any viewer based on any information or content supplied or communicated in or through such video is hereby expressly disclaimed. All such information or content is expressly provided as is and free of any representation or warranty of any kind.